Hey everyone! Welcome to episode 1 of Jessie's quest for her new favorite fantasy series. So this will be a series of videos that I'm going to be doing throughout the year, and I am determined to find new favorites throughout this year of fantasy books that I just love. So the first episode of this quest is going to feature 3 fantasy books that I've been meaning to read for a while now, and that I think have the potential to truly be all-time favorites. The first is The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams, one that is on my must-read books of the year list, one that was on my must-read books of last year's list. Ninth Reign, I've seen so much love for. It's apparently very unique world building, kind of strange, has a lot of weird stuff going on. I'm intrigued. So I think that this one could truly be an all-time favorite series. The next one is The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. I was sent this for review by Orbit, and I'm so excited because the sequel just came out for this book. So I now feel like I have that extra motivation to start this series because I can dive right into the sequel if I love this first book. And I've heard amazing things. I've heard that our main character, Sir Conrad von Volt, he is detective, judge, and executioner all in one. And I've heard this story is told from like his apprentice's point of view, a young woman's point of view, kind of observing his story and telling his story to you. And I've heard it's great. So I'm really, really excited. And I've heard amazing early buzz about the sequel. People seem to be enjoying the sequel even more than this first book. So I think I could love this. I really do. And then the third book I have is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. If you didn't already know, I started a Patreon a couple weeks ago, and a part of that Patreon is a book club, a fantasy book club. And this is actually the first book pick of that fantasy book club. So I know I have to read this in March, and I am so excited to finally be getting into it. It is an Egyptian-inspired fantasy world following a con woman named Nari who accidentally summons this jinn warrior and gets swept up into this magical world of Daevabad. And I've just heard the world building's fantastic, the characters are great, the magic's cool. I've just heard so many good things. It just seems like this book has all of my buzzwords, and I'm so excited for it. So these are the 3 books I'm going to be checking out for this video. If I were to guess the ranking at the end of this video of which book I enjoy the most, I think I'm going to enjoy The Justice of Kings maybe the least, because I've heard great things, but I've also heard that the sequel improves upon the first book. So maybe the first book, even if I really enjoy it, won't like blow me away, but maybe the sequel really will. So maybe this one I would say I might enjoy the least, but I hope I still love it. And then I think after this, I'm gonna say The Ninth Reign, because even though I've heard great things about this first book, most people when they talk about this, they talk about the trilogy as a whole being a favorite. So again, kind of like Justice of Kings, maybe this first book won't be like ultimate favorite status, but maybe once I actually finish the trilogy, it will be. So I'm going to say Ninth Reign second, and then I'm going to say City of Brass first, because so many people just rave and rave about City of Brass. I don't think I've seen a negative review. So I'm going to guess that this will be my ranking, first, second, third. We'll see if I know myself, know my taste. Let's just get started, and we are going to start off this quest with me reading The Ninth Reign. I will see you once I have an update. am 70 pages into ninth reign, and we just had a scene with the nastiest creatures ever. Ew. The way they attack people is so gross. It's like reading it, like, ew. Yeah, I can see why people say this is very unique, weird world building, because so far, I definitely agree. I am 180 pages into the ninth reign, and I am really, really enjoying this. It takes a while to get into because it's a bit confusing, and the world is so different and unique, but I love the characters. Vintage is my favorite character. Noon is, oh, I love her. And then I really like Tor. So I really like all of the characters so far. The world building is just so different. I'm trying to, maybe I can give you like a quick summary. Sometimes it's hard to like try to summarize these big epic fantasies, but here's my shot at it. So ninth reign follows a world where every few centuries there are these large wars or storms that kind of change the layout of the world, and they're called the reigns. So you have the first reign, the second reign, the third reign, and the latest reign was the 8th reign. So we haven't had the 9th reign yet. And one of these reigns brought about these creatures that are plaguing the world. They're poisoning the world. And our main characters are trying to figure out where these creatures came from, what is their purpose, what is their motive to what they're doing, and trying to figure out how to fight them so that they don't poison the rest of their world. So that is kind of the gist of what I'm getting so far. There's also just these fantastical like races of fantasy beings, where one of our characters is a fantasy being called an Aboran. And these Aborans are very tall, and they live for hundreds and hundreds of years. And they used to live off of this god's like golden sap. And that god like took away the golden sap one day. And so they've been living off of like human blood, but the human blood makes them sick. So there's all these like different kinds of creatures and races. It's very different. And so it took a while to like figure out what was going on. And my previous update, I was like, oh, this is really gross. There is some pretty gruesome stuff. So I think that might be where people are saying this could have like maybe some horror elements, if you would call them horror elements, because some of the like deaths and like the way some of these creatures kill people is like really disgusting. And thank God I'm not a super visual reader, because if I visualized enough to like be super grossed out, but I know some people, like when they read, they see like a movie in their head, and I would not want to see a movie with some of these scenes. So I'm really liking this so far. I'm very excited to keep going, and I can see why people say it's weird, but it's also very cool and good. So excited to keep going. I will keep you updated. I am now over halfway through the 9th reign. I'm about 330 pages in, and I'm still really liking it. It's very, very weird. So sometimes it's hard for me to follow exactly what's going on because the world building is so out there. And so sometimes like my eyes are glazing over just a little bit, but most of the time I'm really enjoying it. So this isn't feeling like a 5-star or like an automatic favorite yet, but it's got a ton of potential. And I feel like once I really can figure out what's going on, I'm really gonna start loving it even more, but so far I'm really liking it. I would not say I'm loving it yet. I do think the writing's great. I do think the characters are great. I really like how this author is putting a very unique spin on typical fantasy creatures that you see a lot, like witches and vampires, putting a very different spin on them. I also just really like the human character that we're following. There is a lot of mystery going on in this book. I'm like very curious what the heck is going on and why. But I am really liking it. So I'm gonna keep going. Just wanted to give you that update that like this is weird. It is so weird. And some of it is so gross. So if you are sensitive at all to any sort of like body horror or anything like that, this is really gross. But I am enjoying it. So I'm gonna keep reading. I finished The Ninth Rain and I really enjoyed it. It was not the 5-star favorite that I was originally predicting. And I think my latest update that I had given you was pretty accurate to how I felt at the end of the book as well, where it's just so strange and so out there and so unlike any other world building I've seen that sometimes I felt myself a little bit lost. And sometimes it was kind of hard to really grasp what was going on and what the characters were seeing and what they were interacting with. It was a little bit difficult to follow at times. However, the ending does give you some really clever answers and has some good twists in it that I was not expecting at all. And I really, really liked the twist at the end. And it makes me really excited to continue on with the trilogy now, because I feel like now we have a little bit more understanding after the ending of like what's going on in the world. There's not quite as much outstanding mystery. I mean, there's still like some questions that we need answers to, but it's not that feeling that I'm so in the dark. So I do feel like I'm gonna enjoy the rest of the trilogy even more potentially than this first book, given the direction of the ending and the twists at the end. I really liked. So I'm super excited to continue on. I'm super glad I read it. I definitely think, even though this first book is not right now a favorite fantasy, I think maybe this trilogy has potential. The characters are really good in this one. I like all of them. I like some of the things that the author decided to do with the characters. I'm trying to be so spoiler free, but I really like where some of our characters end up. And yeah, I'm a big fan. So I'll leave it at that. Very excited. I gave it 4 stars. I'm gonna stop talking about Ninth Rain now, and I'm going to move on to the next book, which is going to be The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. This morning I got about 120 pages into The Justice of Kings, which is a very good sign, because the fact that I was able to, in one sitting, read 120 pages and not get bored or not want to like get up and do something else, I was fully engaged with those 120 pages. And so far, the setup of the story is quite intriguing. I had no idea what to expect from this book. I had no idea what the plot was. All I had heard was that Sir Conrad von Valt, the main character, was judge, jury, and executioner all in one, and that it's told from his apprentice's point of view. And that is all I had heard. So I had no idea what to expect, but I really like the setup. So like the hook mentions, Sir Conrad von Valt, he at the very beginning of the book is called to investigate this mysterious murder of this lord's wife, and it's very unexpected. There's really no leads for it, and he's having to investigate, do a bunch of interviews with people, And it feels like a murder mystery book in a fantasy world, which I am loving because I love a good murder mystery. I read a lot of thrillers, and the fact that it's put in this fantasy world, it makes it even more fun. So I am like having such a good time, and I genuinely have no idea where it's going to go or who done it or what's happening. So I'm like very intrigued. And these kinds of plots usually have me very much turning the pages because I just have to know what's going on. So that's definitely the case with this one. I just have to keep turning the pages because I'm so curious. Who did it? Who committed the murder? And I feel like the world is about to expand because where I left off, something happens that is another inciting incident that kind of hints at something larger going on, like a larger conspiracy going on. And there was like an action scene right before that that was quite exciting with our characters that had me very excited for what was to come. So I think Sir Conrad von Volt and our leading cast of characters are in a little bit over their heads maybe this time. And I'm curious to see where we go. I really like the cast of characters. I will say the main character that we're following, who is the clerk, the apprentice for Sir Conrad von Volt, she is a 19-year-old girl, and she's a little irritating because right now she's very much like, I don't know what I want to do with my life, and I'm not happy, and I'm going to be very angsty. But what I like about it and why it's not bothering me too much is you're following, the book is written as if she's an older version of herself telling this story about her younger self and those experiences. So she kind of adds a little bit of commentary where she's like, I know I was being ridiculous when I was doing this thing, or it's very embarrassing to have to write this, but this is what I was thinking at the time. So she kind of adds a little bit of like commentary and reflection on her past behaviors, which makes it a little bit easier to sympathize with her and like her because you know that she eventually kind of grows out of this, and it reminds you that like she's still quite young. I also really like another character who's kind of the guard of Conrad von Volt and the apprentice. Bressinger is a total surprise. I was not expecting to enjoy that character maybe even more than von Volt. So far I'm having a really good time with this one. Will it be 5 stars? I don't know. If I were to predict right now, I would say no, maybe 4, but I'm really enjoying it still. So I'm gonna keep going and I'll give you another update when I have another one to share. I am at page 220 of The Justice of Kings, and the scene that I just read was amazing. The necromancy magic in this is so creepy, and it makes my fantasy horror loving heart very happy. So I am very impressed. I was not expecting that. This makes me very excited to keep going. I had not heard much about the horror elements in this book, and I'm glad that it was a nice surprise. Okay, I am now at page 315 of Justice of Kings, and I have about 100 pages left, I think, in this book, so I wanted to give one last update before I actually finish the book. I am really enjoying this. I still don't think it's going to be 5 stars unless the ending is like unbelievable. I still think it's like trending towards a 4-star right now, but I will say the stuff we just had with our main perspective of Helena was really fascinating and made me really like her a lot more, even though there were some things where I was like, really, Helena, really? So I'm enjoying this a lot. And there are times, I can see why if you would have expected this book to be all about the main guy on your cover, Von Volt, you could have been disappointed because there was a big chunk of this book that didn't have him in it at all. But luckily I like Helena, so it was okay to kind of take a break from him. Very curious to see how the last 100 pages goes. So I'll let you know once I finish this one. Hopefully I finish it today and can give you my final thoughts. I just finished Justice of Kings, and my 4-star rating that I was predicting for this one, it is still the case. It is 4 stars. I had the right idea the whole time about what my rating would be for this one. The ending, I will say, was wild. And some of it I was like, where did that come from? But it has me very intrigued for what will happen in the next book, especially with the magic in this world. There's a lot left to be discovered with some of the magic. And I liked how subtle the magic was in this first book, but I have a feeling it's going to play a much, much bigger role in the next book. So very curious to find out where this one is going. I really liked kind of the character, I almost want to call it like the opposite of character development for Sir Conrad von Volt. It was definitely character development, but it was in the opposite direction that I was expecting it to be, which I really liked. And seeing him at the end there was really interesting. So I'm very curious, again, to see where this one goes. It's not a favorite, but maybe you never know. Tyranny of Faith could be, so it may surprise me. So now that I finished Justice of Kings, I only have one more book to go for this challenge, and that is The City of Brass. So I will come back to you when I have an update for that one. All right, I have my first update on The City of Brass, which I am about 110 pages into. And you know when you start a new book and just from page 1, you know that it's going to be a book you really enjoy? That's City of Brass. I had a really good first impression from the very first chapter of this one, and have just been enjoying it so much since then too. And it especially helps because the book I picked up right before this one was a DNF. And I always get nervous after I DNF a book going into a new one because I wonder, is it me right now? Is it my mood? Am I just not in the mood for fantasy? Am I not in the mood for reading? Nope, not the case. It validated my feelings about DNFing the other book because as soon as I picked this one up, I immediately was connecting to it and was intrigued by it and was engaged by it. So it really was just the other book not being for me. I'm really enjoying this so far. If you don't know what City of Brass is about, it's about a girl named Nari who lives in Cairo, and she is a con woman. And she has these very unique, mysterious abilities, these healing abilities. And she also has a really unique gift with language where she can pick up and understand and then speak any language. She's had this gift since she remembers, since she was very little. So combining these healing and language abilities, she has this unique skill set that makes her a very good con woman and a very good thief. But she accidentally summons during this ceremony a jinn, which is like a spirit or a genie. In this world, they call them devas. So she accidentally summons one who whisks her away to the magical world of Devabad. And because of her skill set, because of what she can do, he believes that she is kind of the key to defeating this ancient enemy in this world that's been around for thousands of years. So it's so good, and the world building is so cool so far. I love this parallel magical world of Devabad. I love learning about all of the like fantasy races in this world and different creatures and how each creature was created from an element. And I love the dialogue between Nari and the djinn that she summons. They have a really interesting dynamic with each other so far. So I'm just really enjoying it. We also have another perspective that I've only read one chapter from, but I'm already intrigued by him. And I really like S.A. Chakraborty's writing style. She gives you world building organically, but not to the point where you're lost at any point. I never feel confused by this world. I never feel confused by what's going on. I always feel oriented in the world and know what's going on. So that really, I appreciate that, because the book I just DNF'd, it was the opposite, where I was constantly confused. So very excited. Yay. I can't wait to keep going. So I'll check back with you soon. I finished The City of Brass. Yay! I finally have read this book that's been on my TBR for years. So I did a bad job of updating you all as I was reading this book. So I think gave one update when I was like 100 pages into this book. And I ended up really, really enjoying this. I really like S.A. Chakraborty's writing style. I think it's a very easy to read writing style, while also having like really pretty descriptions and really great dialogue between characters. And I really like our cast of characters right now. I know that there's one character in particular who people have very divided opinions on. And if you've read the series, you probably know which character that is. And for me right now, that character I really like, but I can see how if later in the series things take a turn, I could see how other people would not like this character. But I really like this person right now. The only thing I will say about The City of Brass that I wasn't really expecting, and that I haven't heard anyone really talk about, or maybe they have and I just don't remember from all the reviews I've seen. It is a very political book, and it is very confusing upon first read to try and wrap your head around all of the politics of this world, because there are some species or races of like beings in this world that can live for hundreds of years, but even some that can live for over 1,000 years. So you have a ton of history that's associated with some of these characters, and through time things change, loyalties change, and the landscape of kind of the political world has changed a lot. So like characters go by multiple different names and like titles, and it can get very confusing to try and wrap your head around all of it. Like who's fighting who dislikes who's an ally to who, and it changes. So that was the only thing that was like unexpected for me, was how difficult it was at times to follow and wrap my head around what was going on. And I'm glad this one is a Patreon book club pick, because I have a live show with my patrons where we're going to discuss this one, and I want to make sure I have all of the alliances, if you will, all of the political factions correct, because it's a little confusing. But I feel like as I continue on in this series, it will get easier and easier to follow. And like the primary plot of the book and our main cast of characters, and like the main driving force behind this particular event that we're following, it is very clear what's going on. It's just the surrounding context is what gets a little confusing. So that is one thing I will note that I was not expecting. And I think that that's the reason this doesn't feel like a full 5 stars to me. It doesn't feel like a new favorite, because upon that first read, it took a lot to like try and follow what was going on, and it wasn't like the most pleasurable experience because of that, I will say. But overall, I really like, again, the cast of characters, love the writing style, love the world building. I think it has potential, right? It has potential to be a fantastic series. I gave this 4 stars. Not a new favorite, so it does not quite fulfill this quest of mine that I'm on, but has potential, again, like Ninth Reign, has potential. Those are my thoughts. Have you read this one? Let me know what you think. And that brings us to the end of this quest vlog. That is my 3rd and final book. So I will be back with you to do a wrap-up of the vlog and to talk about my overall thoughts. So I finished all 3 books. Let's talk about my overall thoughts and how I'll rank these 3 books now that I've read them all. So I would say actually this was a success, even though I didn't find a new favorite fantasy book from like the first books in these series. I think all of them have the potential to become a favorite fantasy series depending on how much the sequels improve upon the first books, or just my experience of the sequels improves upon the first books. So even though none of these were 5 stars, none of them were new favorites, I consider this a success. I gave all of these books 4 stars, so trying to rank them is quite difficult because they're all kind of like right there where I really enjoyed them, but they didn't give me that like, oh my God, I love it, I'm obsessed feeling. So let's see. I would say actually the way I'm holding them right now is probably my ranking, where Justice of Kings may be the lowest 4 star, but I still really liked it. City of Brass was then the next highest, and then Ninth Reign is my highest 4 star, I guess, of these 3, but it's really hard because they're all very close and they're all so different from each other. This feels very much like classic fantasy with like a little bit of horror and murder mystery thrown in, and it feels a little bit, yeah, just more like what you typically get from your fantasy books in terms of like the setting. But the City of Brass had really unique world building and very cool politics, so that was super different from Justice of Kings. And then Ninth Reign is just like a whole new level of weird and unique and so unlike anything I've read. So yeah, these 3 books, really enjoyed them, and hopefully this was fun to watch. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? And then what is a book that you think would be a new favorite fantasy for me? What is a book I should feature on a future episode of this series that I'm doing to find that new favorite fantasy book? Leave those comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to. All the information for my Patreon, if you'd like to join, is also linked down below, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye!